A. She appeals in the first instance to the writings of the New Testament, using them not as inspired books, but as the genuine works of contemporary writers, in the same way as she appeals to Tacitus, Seneca, or other trustworthy authorities. In this way it is established by purely historical evidence that there was such a person as Christ, that he founded a society which received the names of the Christian and the Catholic Church, that society has continued to exist through successive generations to the present day, and that the Church is that society. B. Still using the New Testament writings only as historical records, she establishes the fact of the miracles of Christ, and especially the fact of the resurrection. Then she infers that Christ is God. In confirmation of his divinity and of the truth of his mission, she appeals to the manner in which his prophecies concerning the Church and the Jewish nation have been fulfilled, to the wonderful spread of the gospel, to the constancy of the martyrs, to the great change for good that the preaching of the gospel has wrought among men, and to the testimony which the Church herself has borne through so many generations, to the belief which has been held in the truth of his miracles. C. Christ having been proved to be God, his words must be divine and therefore infallibly true. But it is on record that he spoke the words, "Thou art Peter," etc. "As the Father has sent me, I also send you. Going, teach all nations. Behold, I am with you all days, even to the consummation of the world." These being God's words, the Church, to which they relate, is a divine institution and has authority from God. D. This Church, founded by God with a mission from God to teach all nations, and armed with a divine promise that God will be with her to the consummation of the world, cannot err in her teaching. She is, by God's appointment, infallible. Such, in substance, is Bishop Clifford's reply, but in offering it he wholly misconceives the exigencies of his position. He brings out the infallibility of the Church as the result of a long line of argument. This doctrine, which is wanted for the foundation of the building, is with him the coping stone of the structure. Or, to state the matter more correctly, it is the last story of a house of cards. For the whole argument is full of disputable points. Thus, in the last clause of paragraph A, "and the Church is that society," he, no doubt, by the Church means the Church of Rome, to the exclusion, for example, of the Anglican Church and the Eastern. But it need not be said what room for controversy there is on that point. In paragraph D, there is a tremendous jump in the assumption that to prove the divine institution of the Church is enough to prove its infallibility. For with regard to the state, we are told the powers that be are ordained of God, yet it does not follow that the powers that be can never issue unjust commands. But this is not the time to examine the goodness of Bishop Clifford's arguments. That will come under discussion at a later stage. What we are now concerned with is whether such a proof as is here offered us makes any pretense of being adequate to the necessities of the case. What is wanted is a proof which will induce us to accept without doubting the teaching of the Church. Now, you cannot submit without doubting to a doubtful authority. It would be ridiculous, for instance, to say, "You must accept without the least doubt the assertions of the Church of Rome, because it is an even chance that she may be infallible." What degree of assurance, then, is such an argument as Bishop Clifford's calculated to afford? You cannot have more assurance of the truth of the conclusion of a long line of argument than whatever assurance you have of the truth of every premise, and of the correctness of every inference used in the argument. If doubt attaches to any one step in the argument, that doubt will attach to the conclusion. If doubt attaches to more steps than one, the conclusion is affected by multiplied doubt. Now, Bishop Clifford cannot possibly imagine that the steps of his argument are free from doubt. The line of argument is, in its general features, the same as that employed by Protestants, which Roman Catholic advocates are fond of saying is not sufficient to warrant certainty of belief without the testimony of an infallible Church. But if Bishop Clifford's account of the matter is right, Protestants have 10 times as much certainty as Roman Catholics. For the arguments by which the former establish their faith are accepted as good and valid by the latter, to the foundation of whose system they are indispensable. But the arguments necessary to establish the points in the system of Roman Catholics which are peculiar to them are such that nobody but themselves can see any cogency in them. Bishop Clifford was probably aware of the weakness of the proof he offers, for he is careful to say that this is only the line of argument which the Church offers to unbelievers. But logic has not one rule for believers and another for unbelievers. If the proof which the Church tenders to unbelievers is not satisfactory, she does not mend matters by saying, "Oh, you will be fully satisfied if you only take my word for everything." This is much the same as if one, seeking a place with you as a servant, brought you a recommendation which you did not think satisfactory, and then thought to make it all right by writing his own name on the back of it. However, I remember that this line of defense was taken up long ago by Dr. Newman, and I believe it is as plausible as any that can be adopted. He frankly owned the impossibility of making out any proof of her claims which will be felt as demonstrably convincing by one who has not already submitted to her. He taught that one must not expect certainty in the highest sense before conversion. Faith must make a venture and is rewarded by sight. The claims of the Church shine, as it were, by their own light. She comes and calls on you in the name of God to bow down before her. And though perhaps you can give no reason logically unassailable for submitting to her, yet after you have submitted, you find that you have done well. You find in her bosom rest, peace, freedom from doubt, and you are sure that she who has bestowed these gifts upon you must be divine.